Coming up on District Wire News, President Obama defends America's actions in Libya and makes his case. What message is the president sending, and what's next for the operation? We have the full report straight ahead.
Then, growing in size, new census numbers show the Hispanic population is increasing in a huge way. We have a live report coming up. District Wire News starts now.
Good afternoon, I'm Jeremiah Patterson.
And I'm Kate Musselwhite. All eyes are on Libya as the U.S. and its allies try to curb violent attacks by the government on the people there. As strikes continue to target forces fighting for Muammar Gaddafi, President Obama responds to critics who are questioning the motives behind the mission in Libya. More than a week after the United Nations enforced a no-fly zone over Libya, President Obama is publicly addressing America's role in the crisis. In a speech Monday night from the National Defense University, the president defended his decision to commit U.S. forces to the UN military mission in Libya.
I refuse to wait for the images of slaughter and mass graves before taking action. When our interests and values are at stake, we have a responsibility to act.
The president said the U.S. military is working with allies like the United Kingdom, France, and Canada, as well as the Arab League, to protect the Libyan people and cut off communications, weapons, and cash supplies to the Gaddafi regime. He stressed that the international mission is to protect and empower the Libyan people, not to take down their ruler of more than 40 years.
If we tried to overthrow Gaddafi by force, our coalition would splinter. We would likely have to put U.S. troops on the ground to accomplish that mission, or risk killing many civilians from the air.
He said the U.S. will be handing over leadership of the mission to NATO allies later this week. Meanwhile, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton is in London, meeting with other world leaders about ways to ramp up pressure on the Gaddafi regime. Military officials say airstrikes by the U.S.-led coalition have helped stop pro-Gaddafi forces in some key areas, but the fighting rages on in several Libyan cities, including the rebel stronghold of Misrata. Secretary of State Clinton met with Libyan opposition leaders this morning in London. She says UN forces won't stop bombing Libya until Gaddafi pulls back his troops and stops attacking civilians.
The crisis in Japan continues to affect products sold in the United States. The list includes cars, computer parts, and now seafood. Danny Rizzo has more on what that means for local restaurants.
The United States became the first nation to block imports from Japan's radiation zone. Engineers are battling to cool reactors to stop further contamination at the 6-reactor Fukushima plant that was crippled by the March 11th earthquake and tsunami. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration has now banned 11 types of vegetables, fruit, and milk products from areas impacted by Japan's nuclear crisis. Even with the food ban, radiation particles have still reached the U.S. and been detected in Maryland's rainwater. Officials say they aren't surprised, though, and the levels found pose no current health threat.
So it's not at all surprising that something that mixes with the water and with water vapor will travel all the way across. In fact, it probably will circle the globe a couple of times.
In Friendship Heights, sushi restaurant manager Amy Chang says her customers have nothing to worry about and that the Seitei Sushi Bar is still open for business. However, Chang does admit she wasn't so confident just a week ago.
For the beginning, we thought it will affect us because we sell sushi. A lot of Japanese staff is from Japan. But after I asked the wholesaler, they said no. Most of the thing from other country is not from Japan.
She says people don't need to worry about the safety of local sushi, with the majority of their imports coming from places like Hawaii and Alaska. U.S. suppliers simply don't rely heavily on Japan for seafood. It's not going to come cheap, though. Chang has already noticed unusually slow lunch hours and says, while small, menu prices are bound to increase slightly, and noted that they are still feeling the crunch on higher shrimp prices from the Gulf oil spill. It all adds up to one more blow for struggling Japan, with a newly estimated $300 billion in damages. With less than 4% of U.S. food imported from Japan, local restaurants say they have yet to feel the crunch from the crisis in Japan, but say it may affect their bottom line down the road. From Washington, I'm Danny Rizzo.
The death toll from an ammo factory explosion in Yemen Monday has now reached 150. Officials say a series of blasts killed locals who were ransacking the factory after it was taken over by militant groups on Sunday. The provincial governor of that area says Al-Qaeda is to blame for the explosion. The explosion comes after months of protests and a weekend of clashes between government forces and Al-Qaeda in the region.
The odds of a government shutdown have increased over the past few weeks. Negotiations over the federal budget have stalled between Democrats and Republicans in Congress, escalating the chances a government could partially shut down next month. Lawmakers have 2 weeks to come up with a solution to the budget in order to resolve the issue.
Washington Mayor Vincent Gray is looking for help in deciding what to do with the district's 2012 budget. With a large budget shortfall, district residents are concerned crucial programs will get cut if taxes don't go up. Dan Merica has more.
Facing an over $300 million budget shortfall, Washington, D.C. Mayor Vincent Gray is looking for some help from D.C. residents. Hosted on the front page of the D.C. government website, the mayor's office is asking people to rank their top priorities for the city. As was the case in the election, education is a top priority for people.
I think the thing about cutting education is if you look at how that priority changed everything, all the issues he's trying to combat, whether it be poverty, whether it be crime, if you cut education, all those things will definitely start to slide in the city, and he will see that immediately.
Many D.C. residents are concerned that schools like this one here, the Janey School in Tenleytown, will get their budgets cut. The Gray administration says the cuts to the budget are inevitable, and they want people in D.C. to be involved. But schools are not the only area that the government is asking the people to consider. Cuts could be made to public safety, public works, human services like libraries, and even transportation like the metro and the circulator. Even still, to many, education is the way to a better future.
Those precious little minds, that's our future.
Gray's office is also asking people how interested they are in increasing taxes, too. Professor Donald Williamson at American University says the taxes don't necessarily have to go up if people don't want them to.
Are you willing to take severe cuts in goods and services that government provides the public in return for at least no increase in tax?
Time is of the essence for Gray, however. He will have to decide what to cut and what to enhance by April 1st, only 3 days from now. In Washington, I'm Dan Merica.
Metro's general manager Richard Sarles says proposed cuts in federal funding would put the public transit system in bad shape. If Congress gives final approval to a $150 million cut, it would reduce Metro's budget by 35% to 40% when matched with potential losses from the District, Maryland, and Virginia. Sarles says the cuts would mean more frequent train delays and fewer new buses.
DC's Circulator Bus is known as one of the city's cheapest and most convenient forms of transportation, running on a regular 10-minute schedule. But some say its reputation could soon change. Jeremy Borden has the story.
Bad news for Circulator bus riders in the district. Fares could double. Transportation officials say that's not the only change. They're also proposing to cut the route around the National Mall. That just in time for this weekend's Cherry Blossom Festival. Both are cost-cutting measures the city says are necessary. Some worry about what the increases could mean.
But anything in this city that discourages people from taking public transportation is a bad thing.
Barsky calls the city's traffic situation a nightmare.
The more we can encourage public transportation and get cars off the road, the more livable a city this would be.
The Circulator now costs $1 per trip, cheaper than the regular Metro bus. The fare would double for those paying in cash, while SmartTrip users would pay $1.50. They may hear from residents like Robert Hammond who say the city should find cuts elsewhere.
And so the system, on the one hand, has to work, yes, but on the other, it has to work for the people.
City officials argue that the cuts will save the city more than $1 million. At a time when the city faces a budget deficit of more than $320 million, it's the kind of change that riders and DC residents can expect more of. In Washington, I'm Jeremy Borden.
A meeting will be held Thursday at 6:30 p.m. at the Courtyard Marriott on L Street Southeast to discuss the proposed changes. The FAA is making new rules for air traffic controllers across the country. This comes after a close call on the runway at Reagan National Airport last Wednesday. Brianna Arredondo is live in the studio with more. Brianna?
Controllers on graveyard shifts and airport towers are going to get a wake-up call from now on. Regional radar facilities will call ahead to let them know a plane is coming, but air traffic controllers are just one part of it. Some passengers say the focus needs to be on the larger picture.
Air traffic controllers are the eyes on the ground for pilots.
But if help isn't there, disaster may happen. Pilots for American Airlines and United landed safely on their own at Reagan National Airport Wednesday. An FAA investigation found the only controller on duty that night fell asleep. The Air Traffic Control Association president says the number of people in the tower depends on air traffic, and it's crunch time mostly in the afternoon.
Those are the busiest periods of the day, and they call them the push. So the push, you staff up because you need more people with more eyes, and as you have lower levels of traffic, you need less people at that time.
One passenger whose son will be a pilot says there should be a backup plan, even late at night.
But what happened the other night certainly was something that doesn't happen often, but it's something that there has to be a backup plan just in case.
The FAA declined an interview but released a statement saying they are reviewing a backup system. FAA Administrator Randy Babbitt says he is determined to make sure we don't repeat Wednesday's unacceptable event. A Navy aviator at the airport says there are other factors that play here too, like the controller's work schedule and environment.
Those are all things that need to be taken into place. It's not just this guy messed up. It's this system was set up so we allowed this guy to mess up.
The technical system controllers use is starting to change. Dumont says the industry is changing from radar to satellite for better safety.
And the new system will be more collaborative. The pilot and the controller will decide what's best for the aircraft, what's best for the route of flight, what's best for that time of day.
And Dumont says communication is vital between air traffic controllers and pilots. The Department of Transportation Secretary Ray LaHood is now requiring 2 people to staff the midnight shift at the tower. The controller on duty that night was suspended after this incident. Back to you, Kate.
Thanks, Brianna.
Coming up after the break, the fast-growing group of Americans. New census data show the rising number of Hispanics living in the U.S. We'll break down the numbers for you with a live report.
And a popular bookstore in the district has new owners. Stay tuned to find out who they are.